What if the very thing you trusted to bring peace into your home was quietly doing the opposite? Imagine a simple rosary, maybe one hanging near your bed or resting on a shelf, becoming the source of spiritual unrest in your life. Not because of what it looks like, but because of where it came from, or how it was once used. This might sound strange at first, maybe even superstitious, but it's a warning that came directly from one of the most spiritually gifted saints in modern times, Padre Pio. Just a few months ago, a woman reached out to me with a story I couldn't ignore. Her family had been struggling, non-stop arguments, financial stress out of nowhere. Her youngest son couldn't sleep, and her husband became distant and cold. She thought it was just life, until she watched one of our videos and decided to take a closer look at a beautiful black rosary she had picked up at an estate sale years ago. Something about it never felt quite right. A week after removing it from her home, she told me everything began to change. Peace returned. Her family started reconnecting. It felt like a fog had finally lifted. That story led me down a path I never expected to walk, and today I want to take you with me. In this video, we'll explore what Padre Pio revealed about certain types of rosaries, why some of them, despite looking holy, could actually be spiritually compromised, and most importantly, how to recognize the signs that something in your home, maybe even something you prayed with, is interfering with your peace and your prayers. If you've ever felt a spiritual heaviness in your space, if your prayer life feels blocked for no clear reason, or if there's a tension in your home that just won't go away, stay with me. What we're about to uncover might change how you see the objects around you, and how you protect your spiritual life from hidden harm. Let's begin. We need to start with something crucial. The rosary is not just a religious accessory or a decorative item you hang in your car or wear around your neck. For centuries, it has been one of the most powerful tools of spiritual warfare the Church has ever known. It's not the beads that hold the power. It's the prayer, the faith, and the intention behind every word whispered through those decades. The Rosary is, at its core, a meditation on the life of Christ through the heart of Mary. When you pray it with sincerity, you're not just reciting words. You're aligning yourself with the mysteries of salvation. You're asking Mary to intercede for you, to walk with you, to protect you, and through her, you're drawing closer to Christ himself. Since the time of Saint Dominic in the 13th century, the Rosary has been credited with miracles, conversions, and even the turning of battles. Not just physical battles, but spiritual ones. Padre Pio called it a weapon, not out of drama or poetry, but because he knew firsthand the power it had to defend against darkness. But here's the part most people overlook. Because it's so powerful, the enemy wants to distort it. He doesn't need to take away your rosary if he can just twist its purpose. That's why some objects, even those that look sacred, can become compromised. It's not about the item itself. It's about the energy, the intention, the spiritual history tied to it. Padre Pio understood this deeply, and that's why he warned us, not to create fear, but to awaken discernment. Because if the Rosary is meant to be a bridge to heaven, we should be careful what kind of bridge we're walking across. Now that we understand why the Rosary matters so much, we need to talk about the danger. Because there are 3 types Padre Pio specifically warned us about, and the first one might already be in your home without you realizing it. Let's talk about the first type of rosary Padre Pio warned us about, the completely black rosary. Now, before we go any further, let's be clear. There's nothing inherently evil about the color black. In fact, in Catholic tradition, black can symbolize penance, mourning, even humility. But Padre Pio noticed something deeper. He saw that many black rosaries, especially ones not purchased from trusted religious sources, were showing up in homes already charged with spiritual heaviness. He encountered multiple cases where these rosaries had been used in occult practices or pagan rituals, then cleaned up and resold in antique shops, flea markets, or online. To most people, they just looked old and beautiful. But Padre Pio saw something else. He could sense it. There was one case he spoke of often, a woman who came to him from Naples with a black rosary she thought was a rare find. Before she even said a word, Padre Pio looked at her, stepped back, and said, "Take that thing away from here." It was not created for prayer. That rosary, it turns out, had once been used in dark rituals and was later disguised as a Catholic item. What he explained later was chilling. Some objects, especially those used in intense emotional or spiritual settings, can carry a residue, a spiritual fingerprint. And if they've been used in the wrong kind of rituals, even a blessing may not be enough. That's why he often told people to remove those items completely, not to treat them with fear, but with wisdom. The second type is what he called the blood-red rosary. This one is tricky, because red in Catholic symbolism can represent something incredibly sacred. The blood of Christ, the martyrs, the Holy Spirit. But Padre Pio warned that certain rosaries, often a deep, almost violent red, were being used in ceremonies that mimicked Catholic prayers while invoking forces far from God. There was a family, for example, that received a red rosary as a gift. Beautiful design, silver details, handcrafted beads. They placed it in their prayer room, thinking it added beauty and devotion. But soon, things shifted. The father began to struggle with sudden fits of anger. The teenage son couldn't sleep. Their youngest daughter was afraid to be alone in that room. When they came to Padre Pio, the first thing he asked was about the red chain in their home. They were shocked. How could he possibly know? He explained that this specific rosary had been created not just as a decorative piece, but as part of a ritual mixing Christian prayers with invocations to other entities. In other words, spiritual confusion had entered their home, disguised as a sacramental, and that leads us to the third, and maybe most dangerous type of rosary Padre Pio spoke about. The multicolored hybrid rosaries made with non-traditional elements. These are the ones that don't just mix colors, but also mix spiritual traditions. You've probably seen them online or in New Age shops. Beads that look like crystals, charms with symbols from multiple religions, crucifixes with strange engravings or stones shaped like eyes. They're often marketed as inclusive, modern, or spiritually open. But Padre Pio had a strong word for these items. He called them agents of spiritual confusion. To him, prayer wasn't just about intention. It was about purity of focus. When we use prayer tools that blend Christian devotion with symbols from other belief systems, it doesn't open more doors to God. It creates interference, static, confusion in our connection. And in a world where so many people are already struggling to stay grounded in faith, that confusion can be spiritually dangerous. These multicolored rosaries often don't look threatening. Some are beautiful, some are handmade, some even come with prayer cards. But if they were made in environments where the creators didn't share your faith, or worse, had intentions contrary to it, they can carry energy that affects your home without you even realizing it. That's why Padre Pio told his spiritual children again and again, be careful what you bring into your sacred space. It's not about fear. It's about discernment. Next, let's go deeper into how to identify these rosaries, the warning signs to look out for, and what you can do if you think one of them might already be in your possession. So how can you actually tell if a rosary in your home might be spiritually compromised? Padre Pio didn't just give vague warnings. He gave us very real signs to look for, patterns that showed up again and again in the lives of people who came to him. And many of them didn't even realize the problem was sitting quietly on a shelf or hanging above their bed. The first and most common sign is resistance to prayer. Maybe you felt it. You sit down to pray with the best intentions, and suddenly your mind is foggy. You get easily distracted. You feel restless. Or worse, you just don't feel anything. If this only happens occasionally, that's normal. But if it happens consistently, especially when you use a specific rosary, that's worth paying attention to. Another sign is tension in your home, recurring arguments over small things, a heavy atmosphere, emotional distance between people who normally get along. These can all be signs of stress, but sometimes they can also be signs of a spiritual interference. And then there are sleep disturbances. This one hits home for a lot of families. Nightmares, insomnia, or waking up feeling drained, especially if more than one person in the house is affected, can point to something deeper. Padre Pio explained that our defenses are lowest during sleep, and spiritually compromised objects can disrupt the peace we're meant to rest in. Children and pets often sense it first. A child who suddenly avoids a certain room. A dog that barks at a corner where nothing is there. A cat that hisses at an object without explanation. These aren't things we need to obsess over, but when they happen alongside the other signs, they're worth considering. So what should you do if you suspect a rosary in your home might be part of the problem? Padre Pio offered clear, faithful guidance. The first step is an honest inventory. Go through the rosaries in your home and ask 3 questions. Where did this come from? Who made it? And what was the intention behind it? If you bought it from a reputable Catholic store or received it from a trusted person of faith, you're likely fine. But if it came from a flea market, an estate sale, or was made by someone whose beliefs are unclear or opposed to Christianity, it may be worth taking a closer look. Next, notice how you feel when you pray with it. If you experience unusual anxiety, distraction, or an overwhelming sense of heaviness during prayer, it may not be coincidence. Now here's something important. Don't just throw it away. Padre Pio cautioned against that. These are religious items, and they should be treated with reverence, even if they've been misused. If the rosary just seems questionable, but not obviously harmful, take it to a priest and ask for it to be blessed again. A proper blessing can reconsecrate an object and return it to its sacred purpose. But if the rosary causes real discomfort, or contains non-Christian symbols, strange engravings, or materials used in occult practices, Padre Pio recommended bringing it to a priest experienced in spiritual matters. They can determine whether the item should be disposed of, and if so, they'll do it with prayer and proper care. In some cases, disposal involves burning or burying the item after a prayer has been said. It's not about superstition. It's about honoring the spiritual nature of what we bring into our homes and releasing anything that no longer serves the light of God. The bigger message here isn't just about rosaries. It's about intentionality. Padre Pio constantly reminded people, your home is a spiritual space. What you allow into it, what you pray with, what you display, should reflect the faith you live by. And that brings us to prevention. How can we make sure we're bringing the right things into our home? Once you've removed anything that might be spiritually compromised, the next question is, how do you restore peace? How do you rebuild a space that not only feels safe, but spiritually grounded? Padre Pio always said, the power is not in the object, it's in the blessing, it's in the intention, it's in the faith. That means no matter what has happened in the past, God's grace is always stronger. The first step he recommended is having your home blessed. This isn't just tradition, it's spiritual shielding. Invite your parish priest to bless the rooms, especially the bedrooms and entryways. You'll be amazed at how the atmosphere changes afterward. There's a reason this has been part of Catholic life for centuries. Next, create a dedicated prayer space in your home. It doesn't have to be big or elaborate. A small table, a crucifix, a candle, a simple wooden rosary that's been properly blessed. When we give God space in our home, we give him room to move in our hearts. Then make the rosary part of your daily rhythm again, but this time with clarity and intention. Choose a rosary you know comes from a holy source, a monastery, a trusted Catholic shop, or even better, handmade by someone living a life of prayer. Simplicity matters. Padre Pio loved rosaries made of wood or glass, crafted not for style, but for devotion. These, he believed, carried a quiet power born from humility. Also, be intentional about where you place these items. Padre Pio often advised families to place a blessed crucifix and rosary near the front door, and another near the beds of each family member. These small actions, done in faith, form what he called a spiritual shield around the home. But even more than that, pray as a family. It's not always easy. Life gets busy, people get distracted, but even one decade of the rosary together before bed can change the atmosphere of your home. It invites peace. It invites grace. You don't need to feel afraid or ashamed if you've unknowingly brought something into your home that carried spiritual confusion. That's part of the journey, learning, growing, discerning. Padre Pio never wanted people to panic. He wanted them to wake up, to realize that our spiritual lives are real and what we surround ourselves with matters. So take this moment as a reset, a fresh start, a chance to clear out the noise and bring back the clarity of faith. Because the rosary, when used as it was intended, isn't just a set of beads. It's a lifeline to heaven, and it's one of the most powerful tools we've been given to protect not only ourselves, but the people we love. Up to this point, we've talked a lot about objects, rosaries, homes, prayer spaces, but there's one sacred space even more important than your house, and that's your heart. Padre Pio didn't just teach people to bless their homes. He called them to purify their interior, to cleanse their thoughts, their intentions, and their spiritual habits. Because a peaceful house means little if the soul inside is still carrying confusion or resentment. So let me ask you something personal. Is there anything in your heart that you've been holding on to that doesn't belong? Unforgiveness, fear, a sense of distance from God. Maybe it's not just the objects around you that need to be removed, but the spiritual clutter within you. This is where the Rosary becomes more than protection. It becomes transformation. When you pray it slowly, meditatively, you allow Mary to walk with you through the life of Jesus. You begin to see your own wounds reflected in His. You start to feel your burdens lighten, not because they disappeared, but because you're no longer carrying them alone. Padre Pio used to say, "The Rosary is the weapon, but love is the victory." So yes, remove what doesn't belong in your home. But don't stop there. Begin the deeper work. Reclaim your peace. Forgive those who've hurt you. Confess what needs to be healed. Start over if you need to. God is waiting, because the strongest protection doesn't come from what hangs on your wall. It comes from what lives in your soul. So let's come back to the question we started with. What if the Rosary in your home, the very symbol of faith you trusted, was never truly meant for prayer? What if it was pulling your spirit away from peace, little by little, without you even knowing? Now you know the signs. Now you understand what Padre Pio was trying to teach us. It's not about fear. It's about faith with discernment. We live in a world where even sacred things can be distorted, mass-produced, or misused. But we don't need to live in confusion. We can choose clarity. We can choose holiness. If something in today's message stirred your heart, if you felt the weight of spiritual heaviness in your home, if your prayer life feels dry, or if you've noticed things that just don't feel right, take this as a gentle nudge from heaven. Padre Pio's words weren't just for his time, they're for ours. Start with a blessing. Clean your space. Reclaim it with prayer. And if you've never had your home blessed, make it a priority this month. You will feel the difference, not just in the physical atmosphere, but in your spirit, your relationships, and your peace of mind. And if you're already living with deep devotion, share this message with someone who may need it. You never know whose family might be quietly suffering because of something they didn't understand. Your simple act of sharing could bring real healing to someone else's home. If you believe in the power of discernment and protection, I invite you to write in the comments, "Padre Pio, protect my home." Your words may be the sign someone else needs to begin their own journey toward spiritual clarity. And if this video brought light to your spirit, please consider liking it, sharing it, and subscribing. This isn't just a channel, it's a mission. Together we're building a community of prayer, awareness, and truth, one soul at a time. Padre Pio once said, "The Rosary is the weapon for these times, but like any weapon, it must be held with reverence and used with understanding." Let's not just own rosaries. Let's pray them. Let's live by them. Let's honor what they truly represent. Thank you for walking this spiritual path with me today. May your heart be filled with peace and may your home be covered in grace. Until next time, pray, hope, and don't worry.